There is someone who loves you, not the way people casually use that word, not comfortably, not conveniently, not in a way that fits neatly inside the life they have built. They love you in a way that was never supposed to happen, in a way that arrived without permission and refuses to leave despite every rational reason it should. And what Carl Jung discovered about this kind of love, the love that defies all logic and all timing, will change the way you understand everything you have ever felt. Dr. Sebastian Hale had a photograph on his desk, not of a person, of a river. He had placed it there deliberately, years ago, as a reminder of something Carl Jung had written that had shaped his entire understanding of human psychology. Jung had written that life is like a river. It does not ask permission to change course. It does not consult the landscape before it decides where to flow. It simply moves, with absolute certainty, toward whatever it is drawn to. And sometimes that movement is inconvenient. Sometimes it floods places that were not prepared to receive water. Sometimes it carves entirely new paths through terrain that believed itself settled. Love, Dr. Hale had come to believe, operates the same way. A woman named Vivienne sat across from him on a Thursday afternoon in late November. She was 38 years old, elegant in a way that suggested long practice at composure. She had the kind of stillness that comes not from peace but from years of holding very large things, very carefully. She set her bag down. She folded her coat across her lap. She looked at him with eyes that were entirely steady and said, in a voice that was entirely steady, "I am in love with someone I was never supposed to love, and I do not know what to do with that." Dr. Hale did not ask her immediately to define what she meant by never supposed to. He had learned over many years of this work that the definitions people give in the first moments of a session are almost never the real ones. They are the surface explanations, the ones that fit into words that already exist. The real definitions, the ones that matter, take longer to find. So he simply said, "Tell me how it began." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "That is the problem. I cannot identify a beginning. It felt like something I woke up inside of, rather than something that happened to me. One day it was not there, and then it was. And by the time I recognized it for what it was already too large to do anything about." Jung wrote about what he called the enantiodromia, a Greek concept that he borrowed and transformed into one of the central ideas of his psychology. It describes the tendency of things to become their opposites at their extreme. The way that the most disciplined people sometimes shatter into wildness. The way the most controlled emotions eventually break through in the least controlled moments. The way a life that has been arranged very carefully, very deliberately, very completely, sometimes produces from within its own careful arrangement the one feeling that arrangement was never designed to contain. Vivienne's life had been arranged carefully. She was honest about this. She had made choices that were considered and responsible. She had built something solid, something that made sense, something that anyone looking from the outside would describe as good, as stable, as exactly what a person was supposed to want. And then, from within that arrangement, from within the very life she had built with such deliberateness, something arrived that her arrangement had no category for, a feeling so specific and so complete that it did not ask whether it was convenient, it did not check whether the timing was appropriate, it did not consult the plans she had made, or the life she had constructed, or the 10,000 invisible rules that governed what she was and was not supposed to feel. It simply arrived. She said, "The worst part is not the feeling itself. I could almost manage the feeling in isolation. The worst part is knowing that he feels it too, that this is not something I am carrying alone, that on the other side of this impossible, inconvenient, entirely wrong thing, there is someone else who is also carrying it, who is also, every single day, choosing not to act on it. And I do not know if that makes it better or worse." Dr. Hale said, "In my experience it makes it both, because this is the specific cruelty and the specific grace of the love that was never meant to happen. It is mutual. It is recognized by both people simultaneously. It does not require one person to convince another, or pursue another, or hope that what they feel is reflected. The reflection is already there. It was there from the beginning. That is part of what makes the whole thing so extraordinary, and so impossible." Jung spoke of these encounters as meetings at the level of the self, not the ego, which is the constructed, socially adapted layer of personality that manages our daily navigation of the world, but the self, the deeper center of the psyche, the totalizing intelligence that contains not just who we are, but who we are becoming. When two people meet at that level, the recognition is not produced by attraction or chemistry or compatible personalities. It is produced by something older and deeper than any of those things. It is produced by the sense, immediate and undeniable, that this person knows something about you that no one else has ever known, that they see something in you that your entire life, up to this moment, has kept carefully invisible, and that kind of seeing changes a person. It cannot be unfelt. It cannot be undone. It cannot be managed into something more convenient by the simple application of willpower and common sense. A man named Ethan had been coming to Dr. Hale for 6 months before he spoke about the specific thing that had brought him there. He had begun with other concerns, reasonable, articulable concerns that a person could bring to a psychologist without feeling that they were confessing something. Work pressure, a vague sense of disconnection from the life he was living, the feeling impossible to precisely name, that something essential was missing. It was in the 7th session that he finally said the real thing. He said, "I met someone, and I need you to understand that nothing happened, nothing physical, nothing that could be pointed to, but something happened that I cannot put back the way it was. And she is not someone I am free to love, and I am not someone she is free to love. And I think we both know that. And I think we have both made the choice to honor that. But the knowing is still there, and I do not know what to do with a knowing that I cannot act on." Dr. Hale recognized this immediately, not because it was unusual, but because it was, in his experience, one of the most common and most misunderstood of all human psychological experiences, the love that arrives in the wrong place at the wrong time for entirely the right reasons, the connection that is real in every way that matters and impossible in every way that is practical, the feeling that should not exist and yet exists with such completeness and such specificity that denying it feels not like wisdom but like a lie. What most people do in the face of this kind of love is one of two things. They either act on it, driven by the conviction that something this powerful must be right, must be meant, must override whatever structures stand in its way, or they suppress it, pressing it down with discipline and duty, and the daily practice of not allowing themselves to look directly at what they know is there. And both of these responses, Dr. Hale had observed, miss something essential, because they both treat the feeling as the primary event, as the thing that needs to be acted on or neutralized, as though the love itself is the point. But in the Jungian framework, the love is not the point. The love is the messenger. It is carrying something that has nothing to do with the other person specifically, and everything to do with what the other person is reflecting about the one who feels it, something that has been waiting, perhaps for a very long time, to finally be seen. Jung described the most intense psychological projections as those that are triggered by a quality in the other person that the projector has lost access to within themselves, something they once had and then buried, something they always longed for and never allowed, something the culture or the family or the circumstances of their life taught them to set aside in the name of responsibility or practicality or survival. And then they meet someone who embodies that quality, not necessarily consciously, not necessarily because that person is extraordinary in any measurable way, but because that person carries, in the specific texture of who they are, an echo of something the other person has been mourning inside themselves without knowing it. And the love that rises in response to that recognition is not simply love for the person, it is love for the lost part of oneself, suddenly made visible again in another human face. This does not make the love less real. It makes it more real. It makes it more significant, not less. Because what it is pointing to is not simply a person to be desired, but a truth to be reclaimed. Vivienne understood this slowly, over the course of many weeks. She began to see that the quality she most loved in the man she was not supposed to love was a quality she had systematically removed from her own life in the years since she had made the choices that defined her present existence. A quality of absolute presence, of being fully alive to the moment without managing it or calculating it or arranging it in advance, a quality of emotional courage that she had once possessed and had then, for reasons she had told herself were mature and necessary, set aside. She had been grieving that loss without knowing she was grieving it, and when she encountered someone who lived from that place naturally and completely, something in her recognized it the way a person who has been hungry for a long time recognizes the smell of food, with a desperation that was not really about the food at all, but about the hunger, This is the first truth Dr. Hale shared with both Vivienne and Ethan. The love that was never meant to happen is almost always revealing something that was lost, something in you that is asking to be found. And the most important question is not what to do about the other person. The most important question is what to do about the part of yourself that they have woken up. But there is another layer, and it is the layer that makes this particular kind of love so specifically agonizing, so specifically beautiful, so specifically, permanently unforgettable. It is not only about what has been lost and what has been recognized, it is also about what cannot be. Jung believed that the psyche grows through the experience of holding opposites, through the experience of containing, simultaneously, two things that cannot be reconciled, two truths that are both completely real and completely incompatible, and that the growth produced by that holding, by that refusal to collapse the tension into a simple resolution in either direction, is a different kind of growth from any other, deeper, more permanent, more transformative in the most fundamental sense. The love that was never meant to happen places you directly inside that tension. On one side, the love itself, real, specific, undeniable, the recognition of something essential in another person that cannot be unfelt and cannot be logically dismissed. On the other side, the impossibility, the commitment, the circumstance, the timing, the consequence, the 100 real and serious reasons why this love cannot be allowed to become what it would otherwise naturally become. And in between those two realities, the person who is carrying both of them is stretched, not broken, though it can feel like breaking, but stretched, expanded into a new capacity for holding complexity, for living with unresolved truth, for remaining whole in the presence of something that the simple categories of right and wrong, and should not, cannot adequately contain. Ethan came to understand something in his sessions with Dr. Hale that surprised him. He had expected the work to be about resolution, about finding a way to either release the feeling or to find a morally defensible path toward it. He had expected to emerge from the process with a cleaner, simpler relationship to what he was carrying. Instead, he emerged with something more complicated and more valuable. He emerged with the ability to hold it honestly, to acknowledge the love without being consumed by it, to honor what it was pointing to in himself, without using the other person as the only possible delivery mechanism for what he needed, to be transformed by the recognition without allowing the transformation to become destruction. This is what Dr. Hale called the integration of the impossible, not the resolution of it, not the suppression of it, but the full, honest, clear-eyed integration of it into the whole of who a person is. The willingness to say, this is real and I cannot have it. And both of those things are true simultaneously, and I am large enough to contain both of them, without either collapsing into denial or burning down everything I have built. This is extraordinarily difficult. It requires a kind of psychological maturity that most of us only develop through experiences precisely like this one. Experiences that ask more of us than we believed we were capable of giving, that ask us to remain whole and honest and alive in the presence of something we cannot have and cannot stop feeling. But those who manage it, who do the interior work rather than simply acting or suppressing, emerge from the experience with something they could not have acquired any other way: a depth of self-knowledge, a capacity for holding emotional complexity, a refusal to settle for anything less than the full reality of their interior life, and a freedom, paradoxically, that comes not from having what they wanted, but from having understood, at the most fundamental level, what they actually needed. Vivienne came to a session 6 months into her work with Dr. Hale and said something that he wrote down because he knew he would return to it. She said, "I think I have been looking at this wrong from the beginning. I have been treating it as something that happened to me, as something that arrived from outside, and disrupted the life I had made. But it did not come from outside. It came from inside. It came from the part of me that had been living a half-life, and finally refused to continue. And the person I fell in love with was not the source of that refusal. He was the face it wore. He was the way that part of me finally found to make itself impossible to ignore." She paused. "Which means the thing I have been longing for was never really him. It was a version of myself that I abandoned years ago and have been pretending I did not miss." Dr. Hale said, "And now that you see that," she said, "now I have to figure out how to get her back. Not through him, through myself. This is the destination that the love that was never meant to happen is always moving toward. Not the relationship, not the reunion, not the resolution in the external world, but the reclamation of something internal, the recovery of a part of the self that had been lost, suppressed, traded away in the name of arrangements that seemed necessary at the time. The other person was the mirror, a necessary mirror, an irreplaceable mirror, perhaps, but still a mirror, and what the mirror was reflecting was never them. It was always you. The you that still exists beneath every choice you have made. The you that has been waiting, with extraordinary patience, for you to finally be willing to look. Now there is something that must be said about the person on the other side of this. The one who also feels it. The one who also carries it. The one who in their own private interior world is also doing the work of holding something that should not exist and cannot be dismissed. They are not at peace either. They are not comfortably settled in the distance between you. They are living in the same tension, the same simultaneous reality of knowing and not being able to have, of recognizing and not being permitted to speak the recognition aloud in any direct or permanent way. And they are changed, as irrevocably as you are, as completely, as permanently. Jung wrote that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. In a love like this, the reaction is enormous, and both people carry the transformation forward into every subsequent chapter of their lives, into every relationship that comes after, into every moment of emotional depth that arrives later and is felt more fully because this particular encounter opened the channel to that depth. This love, even unexpressed, even impossible, even entirely silent, does something real in the world. It does something real in two people. It expands their capacity for knowing themselves. It awakens in them a quality of emotional presence that a quieter, simpler, more convenient life might never have produced. It shows them what they are made of, what they are capable of feeling, how alive they actually are beneath whatever surface they have learned to present to the world. And that, in the end, is not nothing. That is, in fact, an extraordinary gift, even when it arrives wrapped in impossibility. Even when it comes accompanied by the specific ache of something real that cannot be lived in the ordinary way. Dr. Hale used to end his sessions with Vivienne and Ethan with a question. Not a question they were expected to answer out loud. A question to carry with them into the week, to sit with in the quiet moments, to return to when the feeling surfaced, as it always did, at unpredictable intervals throughout the days. The question was this: what is this love teaching you about yourself that no easier feeling ever could? Because the love that arrives without permission, that refuses the categories of appropriate and inappropriate, that is felt completely by two people who cannot allow themselves to follow it into the life it might otherwise become, is not a malfunction, it is not a mistake. It is not evidence that something has gone wrong in the universe or in you. It is evidence that you are alive in a way that is deeper than convenience, that you are capable of being reached at a level that most people spend their entire lives protecting themselves from being reached. That something in you is still completely open to the kind of truth that cannot be managed or arranged or planned for. That openness is rare. It is valuable beyond the love that triggered it. It is the thing worth keeping, the thing worth honoring, the thing worth turning inward and using to finally, completely, fully know yourself. The love that was never meant to happen did not arrive to destroy you. It arrived to show you who you actually are, what you are actually capable of. How fully and how irreversibly alive you still are beneath everything you have learned to be. That is the message. That has always been the message. The question is not what to do about the love. The question is what to do with what the love has revealed. And the answer to that question has nothing to do with the other person. It has everything to do with you. What you do with that revelation, how honestly you look at it, how completely you allow it to change you, how courageously you use it to reclaim what you lost, and live more fully from this moment forward, that is entirely, completely, permanently yours.